question 39 of the Summa Theologia Prima Secunda, we are in our last question on the concupiscible passions, and we have been on the passions for quite some time. You can see this is 39 of 48, okay, from 22 to 48. That's the portion of the Summa that talks about the passions. And so we still have about 10 more, and tomorrow we'll begin the Irascible Passions with hope and despair, and spend about 10 questions on the Irascible Passions now that we've spent a lot on the concupiscible. And, St. Thomas Aquinas has spent a lot of time on sorrow and pain, a little more than I expected. I'm a little surprised at how much he's going into this, but the articles here are just 4 articles, and it talks about the goodness and malice of sorrow and pain. Now, you would naturally think, well, of course, sorrow and pain are bad because they hurt or they make you feel bad. But he's going to take a very different approach to this. And so I think you'll find this interesting. I can almost guarantee you that you will learn something about something as practical as sorrow and pain, which we feel on a regular basis through these 4 articles of the Summa Theologia. So the first one is whether all sorrow is evil. All right. And so it would seem natural that, sorrow is evil. Because like this lady here, it hurts. It makes us feel bad. We get depressed, that kind of thing. He has a little bit different of a take, as you might expect. He says a thing may be good or evil in 2 ways. First, considered simply and in itself, and thus all sorrow is an evil. Okay, that's the way we generally think about it, right? Because the mere fact of a man's appetite being uneasy about a present evil is itself an evil, because it hinders the response of the appetite in good. All right, so that's kind of the common sense approach. But then listen to what he does here in the second one. I think this really ties in well to human nature, our final end. He said, secondly, a thing is said to be good or evil on the supposition of something else. Thus, shame is said to be good on the supposition of a shameful deed done. Okay, that's a great example. We do something stupid or sinful and we feel shameful. Well, the shame is sorrow, but it's associated with an evil that we should have avoided in the first place. Accordingly, supposing the presence of something saddening or painful is a sign of goodness if a man is in sorrow or a pain on account of the present evil. Okay, so therefore it becomes good. For if he were not to be in sorrow or pain, this could only be because he feels it not, or because he does not reckon it as something unbecoming, both of which are manifest evils. All right, so a person does something objectively sinful, they don't realize it's sinful, so they don't feel sorrow. Well, that's bad, because they should realize the objective nature of the evil action that they just committed. Consequently, it is a condition of goodness that, supposing an evil to be present, sorrow or pain should ensue. Wherefore Augustine says, quote, "It is also a good thing that he sorrows for the good he has lost, for he had not some good remained in his nature, he could not be punished by the loss of good." Okay, another great take here. Augustine says that the very fact that we feel sorrow for something bad is because there's goodness in us. We feel sorrow because we're good, and something is off, right? Because, however, in the science of morals, we consider things individually, for actions are concerned about individuals. That which is good on some supposition should be considered as good. All right, so that's article number 1. 2, whether sorrow can be a virtuous good. So now Thomas is up in the ante and saying, okay, not only is it not always evil, but maybe it can actually be a good. Insofar as sorrow is good, it can be a virtuous good, for it has been said above that sorrow is a good inasmuch as it denotes perception and rejection of evil. Okay, that's what we just talked about. These 2 things, as regards bodily pain, are a proof of the goodness of nature, to which it is due that the senses perceive and that nature shuns the harmful things that cause pain. All right, so he's saying our bodies naturally will try to avoid painful things for our bodies, so our souls also should do the same with regard to moral evil or bad choices, and then we have this resistance to feeling sorrowful, right? As regards interior sorrow, perception of the evil is sometimes due to a right judgment of reason, while the rejection of the evil is an act of the will, well disposed in detesting that evil. Now, every virtuous good results from these two things, the rectitude of the reason and the will. Wherefore, it is evident that sorrow may be a virtuous good. All right, so again, this you got to understand the big picture of the Summa, what St. Thomas Aquinas is getting at. He is incorporating now here passions and also the intellect and the will, which are three of the very important faculties of the human person. Whether sorrow can be a useful good. He says a twofold movement of the appetite ensues from a present evil. One is that whereby the appetite is opposed to the present evil, and in this respect, sorrow is of no use. Okay, so if you just take the basic reaction in and of itself, not with any other circumstances or consequences, then that's of no use, because that which is present cannot be not present. The other movement arises in the appetite to the effect of avoiding or expelling the saddening evil, and in this respect sorrow is of use if it be for something which ought to be avoided. Because there are two reasons for which it may be right to avoid a thing. First, because it should be avoided in itself on account of its being contrary to good, for instance, sin. Okay, so this is somewhat review from the last article, but he's saying it's useful to feel sorrowful if you're avoiding a sin. Secondly, a thing is to be avoided not as though it were evil in itself, but because it is an occasion of evil, either through one's being attached to it and loving it too much, or through one's being thrown headlong thereby into an evil, as is evident in the case of temporal goods. All right, so it's useful to feel sorrowful if we've eaten too much, or we've committed some kind of maybe sin of the flesh or sexual sin or something like that. You feel guilt, you feel sorrow, and he's saying, well, that's a good thing. It's useful because it's conducive to our final end. Moreover, sorrow for that which ought to be avoided is always useful, since it adds another motive for avoiding it, because the very evil is in itself a thing to be avoided, while everyone avoids sorrow for its own sake, just as everyone seeks the good, the pleasure in the good. Therefore, just as pleasure in the good makes one seek the good more earnestly, so sorrow for evil makes one avoid evils more eagerly. All right, whether bodily pain is the greatest evil, is the pain of the body the greatest evil? And as you can probably expect, probably not. It is impossible for any sorrow or pain to be man's greatest evil, for all sorrow or pain is either for something that is truly evil, or something that is apparently evil but good in reality. Now, pain or sorrow for that which is truly evil cannot be the greatest evil, for there is something worse, namely either not to reckon as evil that which is really evil, or to not reject it. Okay, that's what he talked in a previous article, is that if we feel really horrible about sin, that's better than not feeling horrible for that sin. So not feeling it would be worse than feeling it. That's what he's saying. Again, sorrow or pain for that which is apparently evil but really good cannot be the greatest evil, for it would be worse to be altogether separated from that which is truly good. Hence, it is impossible for any sorrow or pain to be man's greatest evil. Okay, there you go. Question 39. And that completes all the questions on the Concupiscible Passions. Remember, there were 6 of them. There were 3 pairs. And now we're going to get into the Irascible Passions of hope, despair, fear, daring, and anger. And that will wrap up this treatise on the Passions. Thanks for joining me. God bless you.